That was usually his answer. Basically he said, I don't know, but here's something you can do to live your life fully. Okay?
I will
and to
tell
die
you,
well at the time of death.
I will tell you one thing that's interesting on that. If you experience a full Kensho, you will know how the world started and you will know how it's going to end. But it's not going to matter. And you won't be able to put it into words anyway. That is one of the most fascinating things of the thing. Once you find the flux, you know how it started and you know how it ends. But try and explain it. Please, go ahead. Anybody else?
I'm wondering if the kind of advice you were giving to being with someone who's dying, is it that different from the way you can be a true friend to someone?
Of course not. That's what a true friend is.
That sounded like that wasn't just specifically for that time.
No, that's what a true friend is. But at the time of death, it is all the more important to do it that way than at any other time. Because you see, you haven't got time to undo it if you do it wrong. Well, if you're a friend and you give bad advice by accident, you can always meet him tomorrow to undo what you've said. But the dying person isn't going to be there. You've got to be sure that you get it right when someone's dying. There's no time for mistakes, no margin of error. Go ahead.
The problem is I see, I'm trying to picture what you're talking about is me being with a dying friend or a dying relative, which I haven't experienced personally. And it seems to me that if I were with a dying friend or my wife or family, that I would be so saddened myself with the death that I really wouldn't be able to communicate that. And my sadness would communicate to them so much, and so that it would not be an event that could really have some interchange.
You have hit upon the reason that I think a priesthood was first invented. To have someone who could be present at the time of death, who was not so involved in the thing that he couldn't give advice. That is what I think the first priesthood's job rightfully was.
I can't say that because I have been in that situation, it is possible to pull yourself together and to say, and to be there and be present, and to help the person. And I think that's one of the blessings of meditation, that when you meditate and when you do what needs to be done, when you have someone in front of you who needs help, no matter who it is, you can lend help. No matter, well, it really depends if because we're human, we get involved sometimes. I was fortunate enough not to get that involved in that sense. Plus the fact the person was in shock most of the time. So.
Yes, it is possible to bring yourself together that much. But there are people who can't, and I think that is what our friend was talking about. Go ahead, Nathan.
Well, then, the component that we have mentioned only implicitly so far, which is the component of loving the other person completely and absolutely, that component is still there. And that's the most important of all. Just being there and loving.
But if someone cannot die peacefully because of something on the conscience or something on the mind that has got to be dealt with somehow or other, if no priest is available that you can really trust, or no friend is available that you can really trust, you're the one that's going to have to pull yourself together to help that person. Because no peaceful death can take place if there is something that is worrying that person that has got to be done.
Now, usually, you are not the only person that is a friend or relative that can be trusted if the person is dying. And if you're in too bad a state, you can at least, call, your brother or, friend or somebody in that can do that.
This is also why it is, I think, absolutely imperative for doctors to tell their patients that they are going to die, to give them time to put this sort of stuff in order. I was told I got 3 months. Fine. So I'll do the finest job of dying I can. What I actually was saying was, let's put everything in order. So when it takes place, if it takes place, I haven't got anything left for somebody else to have to do. And if you can tell somebody that 2 or 3 weeks before it takes place, it does help a tremendous amount. I know that a lot of doctors have felt worried about doing that. Oh, should one tell them? I think one should. They have the right to know so as to get themselves ready.
The only problem with that is that, as you proved it, you can never predict a person's demise.
I'd sooner predict that somebody was going to die and have him work so darn well that he didn't. I feel that I'd done a pretty good job in some ways.
You don't have to make it a prediction. I mean, you can say that there is a certain possibility. Whether it be a low possibility, whether it be a high possibility. You can say that.
You can say this can kill you if under such and such circumstances.
Yeah, but then you're reversing the whole psychology of the mind over the body. If you have someone, and say, let's hypothetically do, someone has a cancer and you do surgery, and there's no evidence of any spread, you remove the tumor, but it's an aggressive tumor. So then afterwards you're sitting down, you're saying, well, everything's out, we've gone as far as we can go. As far as I'm concerned, there's no tumor in there now. And the next question is, well, will there be? Well, if you say, of course, there's always a chance it can come back. There's no guarantee it can't. But I would say the chances are that you have a good chance to survive. I think that's a better approach than saying, no, this thing is pretty aggressive and the chances are it's going to kill you. I would much rather have the person...
I don't think those two are... what's the word?
Mutually exclusive?
Yes, I don't think those two are mutually exclusive. You were going to say something.
Well, assume under this circumstance, suppose it does come back. Now, how is that usually a matter of hours from the time at which it's discovered till it's terminal? No, it's usually a matter of at least days, sometimes weeks. Yes.
Months, years.
Yeah. So under those circumstances, I don't think we're at the point at which that information is necessarily necessary. I would agree with your approach to it. But when it does come back, if assume it does, and assume it's inoperable, okay, then...
I think I would say there is always a possibility, just so that the person is sort of almost on the alert for it. And the very alertness might make him do the thing. It's like coming to the lights at me, and having the lights start to turn yellow. They're not yet gone red, so oops, I better start thinking about this thing.
Well, the other approach is when they say, will I die, is this going to kill me, or am I dying from this? I usually say, we're all dying every day, and we should always prepare for death. Whether you have this or anything else, I think that's part of life.
Well, the
I don't know if that's correct.
The surgeon who worked on me in Japan when I told you I had an ovarian tumor, the surgeon who worked on me told me bluntly it was going to kill me if he didn't take it out. So I said, all right. And when it was done, I said, all right, now how long have I got to live? He said, I don't know. Who knows the answer to that question? So I said, well, what on earth is the point of your doing the surgery? I said, the bod's going to kick the bucket anyway sometime. I'm like, well... And he obviously hadn't got that one too well sorted out.
It wasn't a good thing to do.
Oh, no, it's not to say it's not a good thing to do, but it did worry him somewhat.
Frame an answer in the context of what you just put out. May not be able to tell you when you're going to die normally, but without certain types of actions, we can very specifically tell you when you're going to die.
Yeah.
So
yes.
there's the other side of the coin.
But he really hadn't got that far, which quite surprised me for somebody who knew as much as he did about the art. Go ahead.
My own experience in this has been that it's best when it's a sharing experience. And
Because that's what it is.
And that neither one, but in the sharing, each one brings to that sharing what is occurring. And it's interesting that that's a wonderful opportunity for the doctor to learn, as the patient learns from the doctor. It's a terrific exchange. The second thing is, one of the real problems is that the dying person often is asked to assume added burdens. It's the doctor who's afraid of death, and so he dumps on the patient, or the family. The families are usually terrible in terms of in a sense, they dump on the patient, and the patient knows it. It's interesting, they really know it. So they assume burdens at that time that are not necessary. And my own advice in terms of what I say to myself and that I've shared with the relatives is that, in a sense, when you are with the dying, look at your own fears of that, and be aware if you are dumping.
Which is precisely why they will not allow anyone in Zen who has not had a full kensho to be present at a death if they can possibly help it. Because, as I said the other day, a kensho is a dummy run. That's a bad term for it. Because any time you have a kensho, it means that you have an experience of God. Therefore, kensho is more preparation for death, a proof that when death comes, there is nothing to worry about than anything else. And if the priest has had that experience, then he just can't dump because there's nothing to dump. And that's exactly why it is so absolutely imperative. And why, in recent years, they've decided that maybe lay people should learn this as well, which is the reason for the attempt to spread Zen in this country and elsewhere, so that death will be a lot easier. Now, if you look at the copy of Lotus Blossom, if you bought one, you'll find that it goes through a whole series of pictures which I had drawn very, very clearly and carefully. This I'm talking about a kensho here. I had these drawn very clearly and very carefully to show the coming to the mountain, which is sort of the blackness, the despair of death, and then the going up through the holes in the mountain, which they talk about on these near-death experiences. You know, you come to this sort of tube and there's this tiny light at the end and you go through it. You go through all of that in a full kensho. What I've talked about in Lotus Blossom is exactly what happens in its main steps. The pictures may be different for each individual person. For a Christian it will be Christ. For each different religion it will take on the aspects of that religion. But the fundamental steps are always the same. That is why I included at the back those 5 pictures that have come out of the Taoist theories, because they had got it down to the 5 basic pictures. So I gave you what it can be like for a Westerner in the here and now, what the 5 basic pictures are, and then you fit your religion and your theories onto those 5 basic pictures, and the 5 basic pictures can be used in any religion. And that is an exact preparation. If you do this as a result of meditation frequently, when the moment of death comes, there can be no dumping. You've already cleaned everything up. You have gone through this a number of times. I've done it 3 now. So it'll just be another occasion. Do you understand what I'm saying on this? It's a very, very important thing. And that is the purpose of Zen. And if you remember, the very first scripture says, if you can understand the reason for birth and death, and know that neither of them exist, then you have understood the whole of Buddhism. And that is exactly what I've been talking about for the last 4 days.
And that's the answer of my question too, about
Yes.
the black holes, etc.
Yes. It is a very, very simple situation. Now, I put a whole bunch of graphs at the back of that book. There's no way I can go through it in 1 hour. I gather most of you've got copies, so you can go through that. But remember, it is me I'm talking about. This is how I did it. Look up your basic pictures and know that whatever you happen to believe, those are going to be the basic steps on how you do it. And they are exactly the same, which is rather fascinating, as the sort of thing that Dr. Moody talks about in his books Life After Life. Except that, of course, since the people came back, they've only done the first one, or most first 2 pictures. Because if they'd gone any further since they were dying, they wouldn't have come back to tell us the rest of it. But you don't have to wait until you're dead to do it. You can get some practice in right now so that when it comes, you do it right. So virtually what you were doing in meditation is getting some practice in for when it takes place. A, so that you do not have to come back again or bring some other being into existence because of what you happen to have done in this lifetime. And, well, there are 3 things. That is the first. The second is so that you can die completely peacefully. And the third, so that you don't leave any perfumes behind. We don't want any goat monks coming coming around. Go ahead.
And the fourth is so that you can get on with the business of living without fear.
Yes. And having done that, you see, I did this big one. I'd done it twice before. I did this big one. But this time I cleaned everything up before I went. Too many people, when they die, don't. Which is why they have this voice, very gentle voice, telling them all the things they've done. And if you remember Dr. Moody's, who says very, very carefully, whatever you do, it seems to be very dangerous to judge yourself, because the voice never judges you. Now that is so true. The cosmic Buddha, God, is not a judge. At the time of death, you judge yourself. That is why your job as an assistant to a dying person is so important. Don't judge the person. Let him get it cleaned up. It doesn't matter. It's done now. Let him go straight to the cosmic Buddha without any of this stuff getting between him. Because if you let it get between, that is what causes the perfume that is then dumped on somebody else. So don't get your judgments in the way. Just be very gentle, very loving. Deal with anything the person needs dealing with. Tell him not to worry about it. Above all, tell him not to judge himself. And let him go straight, all the way, off into the peace and into this beautiful flow. And that way you also make the world get better, because there's none of this stuff coming back again for somebody else to be dumped with, which has got to be worked out, and which will affect somebody else's personality. It will bring about another critical mass. And who knows, that could be a murderer, it could be a thief, it could be all sorts of things. Do not assist in the bringing about of a critical mass, i.e. another human being that's, whose karma you have not helped to clean up. It's a very neat system. What's more to the point, it's provable. You can prove it for yourself. I don't have to doctrinalize about it, which I love. I couldn't stand people that doctrinalized in my ears. I never could stand being people who tried to convert. There's a tale on that score that I've mentioned to some of the monks here during my student days and the results thereof. I don't believe in people who try to convert you. Just believe what I'm saying if it happens to be true for you. Try it and see if it works. And that's all I'm asking any of you to do. And if you don't want to try it, that's fine too. I've given you a bunch of information.
Parenthetical comment. I don't think anybody here would do this, but the worst time to try to convert somebody is when they're dying. Don't do that. Don't do that.
That was put into our heads with a vengeance in Swordigy. because a tremendous number of the people were Shin Buddhists and Tendai Buddhists and all the different sects of Buddhism. And we were Zen, and of course Zen was the one and only sect. Well, of course it is, otherwise you wouldn't join it. Every sect that a person joins is the one and only sect. Otherwise they belong to some other sect. That being so, every one of us as youngsters felt, we've got to really convert these people. And a lot of them could not understand why it was said, now you're going to have to study Shin, you're going to have to study Tendai, you're going to have to study Nichiren. Well, what do we need to know that for? Well, supposing somebody gets killed on the motorway, which was what they called the freeway, and he's a Shin Buddhist, and what are you going to do? Kneel over him and say, you're not going to the cosmic Buddha until you go via Zen? You are going to have to settle down and say, right, the Amida Buddha is coming for you. You are not going to call him Shakyamuni Buddha. You are going to see the Amida Buddha for this person. You are going to see the Amida Buddha opening his arms for you. You are not going to say, well, if you'd done Zen, it would have been better. You'd have been prepared for it, which is true. You are simply going to say, here comes the Amida Buddha for you. And you're going to leave it that way.
Every once in a while I refresh my mind on the 23rd Psalm of the Lord's Prayer, just in case I'm driving down the freeway and there's an accident and the highway patrolman stops and says, Father, this man is dying, will you help him? I'm not going to say, but I'm going to,
And it is also advisable to know the Catholic, the Catholic absolution. I have memorized the absolutions of all the various faiths.
It's what the chaplains do in the army. I mean,
including the Greek Orthodox. So that if I'm the only bod around, I can do something. I'm not going to sit and fuss at that point as to who's right and who's wrong, and if I've got an atheist, I'll just cuddle him. It'll be the end of it. I mean, I want the person to make it. I'm not in this for a head count. I think anybody who is in this business for a head count is a fool. So please remember, it is well advisable, if you are going to help the dying, to get a whole bunch of prayer books and just memorize certain things, but above all, memorize the absolutions. They're what count. They want to hear that man has forgiven them. God hasn't got an argument. God is neither forgiving nor non-forgiving. God is. He is this beautiful flowing thing. It's us who make the judgments. We're the ones with our morality. There is just cause and effect. There's nothing more than that. The effect of the cause is to feel guilty, because man has made him do so. So man has to forgive him. And thereafter he can go straight to God. Very important point.
Obviously, if there's time, you get someone of the appropriate
Yes,
faith.
obviously, if there's time, but frequently there isn't. There was a big fire in Oakland, 3 years ago, I think it was, 2-3 years ago. And you, Echo, over there, we were looking out of it, and we were looking out at it, and a fireman or a policeman came by and said, "Get you to the centre, Father. They may need help." You haven't got time at that stage to sit around and argue, do I know what to do? You better know what to do. Fortunately, nobody got killed, but they might have done. Go ahead, you were going to say something. Now, there is a bunch of exhortations for helping people in time of death, or when they are mortally ill. These come in the Book of Life, and because my sinus is acting up like stink, I'm going to ask Isaiah to read them for me. I'm sorry, when this dry weather hits, I have fun. It's the result of a doctor using some, I don't know what they call that stuff. It was something that burned out the works up here. Anyway, go ahead.
This gets into the point that, as far as Zen is concerned, the moment of clinical death is not the end of being with the dying. And in fact, for us, being with the dying continues for a number of days after the moment of clinical death. These exhortations are what would be the essence of what would be said to someone who was dying and who was a member of our own church. I think that if you read between the lines to see there's something in this, I think, however, that goes beyond.
Yes,
the
and
specifics
you
of
can change it for Christianity or Judaism or anything you want to.
Okay, so would you like me simply to start reading these?
Yes, please.
The first one, at the time when death appears to be imminent, but has not yet taken place. And this would be done by a priest.
But it can be done by a layman or relative.
I transmit to you that which I received from my true teacher, the cosmic Buddha, the great Dharmakaya, Dharma itself, who transmitted to all the true masters, the Nirmanakayas before me, and from whom, as my own master, I learned it in detail. Pay attention, be still, calm, clear-headed. Do not allow your thinking to wander, or you will not hear the voice of the Lord. Be mindful of what you hear. Do not succumb to restful oblivion from pain and suffering, for they will return in your next life if you do not face them now and know that they are as a dream. Face them and go straight to the Lord. Do not look from side to side. Do not look down. Look up. See the Lord with open arms await you. Be alert. Be ready to say, yes, I am willing, when the moment comes. Know that nothing stands between you and the Lord, except your own opinion of yourself. Do not give in to forgetfulness. Go right through the pain and suffering to that which waits. Be aware, be alert.
The Lord here referred to, remember, as this beautiful stream, this beautiful energy. That is the real thing, but it will appear in all sorts of different forms to the person concerned.
The components which comprised you
always know it, by the way, sorry.
Are now disintegrating. Mind is separating from physical matter and entering through the tunnel known as the place between life and death. Look up to the light at the end of the tunnel. Gather your energy, for you must go through this tunnel in full consciousness of spirit, in full control of your will. Say with me the litany of the great compassionate one, with all of your being, which would then be recited.
You don't worry about whether the person can actually say it, and if I were doing this with a Christian, it would be the Our Father, or the Creed.
Some instructions to the priest are, do not worry if the dying person seems to make no sound or cannot recite this. If you recite it with a true heart, you will hear. Do not doubt.
There is also, don't try to pull him back. Let the man go, man or woman go. Don't try to keep grabbing them back.
The second exhortation for the time of clinical death.
This is the actual moment of clinical death.
As lightning appears the luminescent splendor of the great Dharmakaya, encompassing you in its glory on all sides.
Remember that Dr. Moody talks about this great light that comes.
Thrilling throughout your entire being. Submit to its embrace, for it is nothing but pure love. Do not, through feelings of unworthiness, try to flee because of your past actions. Do not judge yourself before the Lord, for in pure love there is no judgment. In this pure love, your past actions are but dreams. Love is love. Do not judge love by your standards of yourself, for this is to cling to a separate self, which is pure illusion. Submerge yourself gladly and willingly in the splendor of the light, which is the splendor of true love beyond all human dreams, the great Dharmakaya. Cry with a great cry, I am willing, and you are saved for eternity. The next one is for immediately before the funeral.
Yes.
It should be a few days later.
Should be 3 days in Buddhism, but well, it's not going to make all that much difference.
If, as a result of terror at the time of meeting the great Dharmakaya, you were shocked out of salvation by the memory of your past deeds, which you believed to have been perpetuated by the real you.
In
rather
other
than the
words, if you
illusion
judge
one.
yourself at the moment of death.
If you have done this, you may now find yourself in a world of dreams. Whether these be pleasant or not, they represent a second chance to enter into the great Dharmakaya. So remain alert in meditation. Do not be pulled away from your true center by fantasies. Today there will have emerged the mind-body which is permeated with all your past karma and former senses. It can pass unhindered through all former physical hindrances such as walls, rocks, and mountains, and encompass any distance of time and space in the twinkling of an eye. You will see and know, although your physical body is no more, since, because you judged yourself, your old karma will still work upon you.
In other words, you see your past life coming before you.
But know this, he or she who did these things is not the real you. These dreams are an illusion. They are not reality.
The real you being that part of you which is the Dharmakaya, the spirit.
They cannot harm the real you. None of these things exist. Fear not. Do not become attached to these dreams. Here the priest utters a quats and continues in a quiet voice.
A quats is a yell to scare the person out of just watching, oh, aren't I dreadful, look what I did. It's to scare him out of it and shift him on. This is one of the reasons you hear these funny yells and screams in Zen monasteries and when meditation is going on. People who are wandering through just looking at what they've done. It's literally to scare the living daylights out of them.
The equivalent of, oi, wake up.
Yeah. Only it's called quats. Oi, you!
Scare the daylight into them.
Scare the daylight into them, right.
Remain still in meditation, neither holding on to any of these things nor pushing them away. Meditation itself is the...
Yes, it's staying in the meditation that matters.
No matter how beautiful, desirable, or horrible, this meditation is itself the great Dharmakaya.
Yes. Incidentally, this is not a random arrangement of times. Dr. Moody, I hate saying this because it makes the East sound superior, and I don't think it is to the West. It's just that over the centuries they have noted things down, and they haven't had an inquisition that didn't allow them to do it. I am sure that somewhere or other in Europe, and I strongly suspect on Mount Athos, they know all of what I know from the Far East. What is talked of here, the 49 days after death, before which the person completely disappears, as we would call it, disappear. All of this stuff has been proved by various great monks. And this is not just something that I have written or a random thing. It is this will happen at a certain period after death. And if you keep exhorting the person during that time, they can still make the right decisions. Although you cannot see them, the spirit is still floating there. It is gradually disintegrating, but it is not disintegrating completely yet, and you can still influence it. I know. I have seen it done, and I've done it. But you have to prove that true for yourself, and I'm not asking you to believe me. I'm only telling you I didn't make this up.
Has it to do with the disintegrating body, yes or no? I mean, is there some connection with the disintegrating body?
I'm not...
There's some connection with the physical, corporeal body in the state in which it's in.
Not after the third day. You shouldn't really bury somebody or burn them for 3 days. There is some faint sort of connection until then. But after that, no. But there is something else that you can get in meditation as a result of meditating. And again, as I'm saying, you have to do it. Don't take it because I'm telling you, you have to try it and find it out true. Go ahead on the next one.
The next one for 3 days after the death, regardless of when the funeral is done.
Yeah.
If you are not yet one with the great Dharmakaya, today you will begin to meet with the benign and peaceful Buddhas, and continue to do so for 7 days. Do not be afraid to look at them. for they are the emanations of the great Dharmakaya. Do not fear their brightness. Enter serenely into their radiance without fear or attachment. Desire nothing. Push nothing away. Say, I am willing, and let the pure love of the great Dharmakaya encompass and bathe your very essence. For it has come to greet and embrace you in this form, which it feels would be more familiar to you than when it first appeared, and thus cause you to fear it less. It will appear as any god, Buddha, or Bodhisattva in whom you truly believe. For, as pure love, it longs for you with a great longing, in which there is no earthly desire. What compassion is this? Go on. These emanations have come to receive you into the Buddha realms. In true faith and humility, pray with all your might. Enter the rainbow halo and become one with the great Dharmakaya. Dwell forever in one of the realms of the Buddhas. Here, for 7 more days, the Lord holds out his arms to you in familiar and loving form, for it is true compassion, the true father, true mother, which is the Dharmakaya, and it awaits for you with outstretched arms unto eternity, if need be.
I don't think there's much I can say on that one. I have done these exhortations for people that I know, especially one person who was one of my monks. And he was very interesting. On the day of the funeral, I knew that there was no peace in the death. And after doing that particular, the one that was just read there, I felt the peace. I knew the person had heard. I cannot tell you how I knew he had heard, and that all was well. And I didn't really need to read the rest of the exhortations. And once you know that the person has heard, and you can sense this, and the priest can sense this, you do not need to go on to the next ones. The situation has been made. The salvation has been accomplished. You can actually do this, and this is one of the greatest joys of a priest.
You won't pull the person back by going on to the
Oh, no.
because they've already won with the cosmic Buddha.
But what you have done is done your rightful job. You have brought peace to a dying spirit, and you have brought peace and comfort to the people left behind. And it is one of the most exquisite moments I know of, to know that that has actually happened. There is one thing I'd like to say before we go on any further. What's the time, by the way?
Almost 11.
That was why I wanted to say this before our friend left us. And that is, there is one big difference between the preparation runs for this and this itself, and that is the preparation runs are done backwards. When you do it in the meditation, rather than when it's actually at the moment of death, you go up through the hells, as it were. You go up through the past lives and all this bad stuff to the heavens. But when you are doing, I use heaven and hell figuratively, all right? You go from what seems to be horrible to what seems to be beautiful. But when you are doing the exhortation, you go straight to the beautiful, and if the person doesn't hear, you come back down to the unbeautiful until he gets reborn. So the preparation goes in the opposite way to the death one. You can see why. There is much more time when you're doing a preparation one than there is when you're doing a death one. You go by jet plane on the last one, not on the first. You're going patiently up the mountain. I just wanted to make that point. Okay. Go ahead on the next one.
The next one is for the week following. If you have missed salvation during the present 7 days, you will from today be meeting the angry deities and demons, and these will continue to threaten you for the next 7 days. Because you have not yet entered into the great Dharmakaya through familiar and loving emanations, it now shows you the confusion of your own mind, so that you may be driven by your own fear to abandon your false views of self and merge with the true self.
It's so exquisite that if you won't do it by kindness, then we'll kick you into it.
These deities and demons, with their numerous followers, may threaten you on all sides. Animals you have never seen before appear with them. In the multicolored lights they cry, beat him, kill him. And these things appear because you caused them to. It is you who, so far, have preferred dreams to the true reality. All of this you have created for yourself and brought upon yourself because your mind does not yet know that there is no separate self. These deities and demons are the result of your own confusion of mind. They are all unreal. Remain still in meditation. Do not try to run from them or towards them. Do not feel fear. Do not fear these creatures and do not flee from them. It is you who have changed the benign Buddhas and Bodhisattvas into these evil-appearing forms by your own false views of yourself and your confusion. In you is the power to turn back to the great Dharmakaya. The reflection of the contents of your own mind, which continues to judge itself by its own standards rather than the Lord's, is appearing to you now in the mirror of the Lord. Do not mistake the reflection for the reality. It is you who have turned the 5 wisdoms into the 5 poisons, and you alone who can, by saying, I am willing, turn them back again to the 5 wisdoms. Should you do this, so great a change will make you unconscious. Your mind and body will disintegrate, and you will become one at once with the great Dharmakaya.
You notice at the point there that the mind-body will disintegrate. It's the holding on to the separate self that has caused this to happen. As soon as you're willing for the thing to disintegrate into this exquisite love of the cosmic Buddha, then all this vanishes.
Turn. Now is the time. The priest then utters another one of these quatsas to wake you up. There's still time. Turn round. Do not fear. Become one with the great Dharmakaya. Enter the rainbow halo of paradise. A week later.
Yeah, if he still hasn't made it.
If you still did not turn back to the Lord before this time, you are now...
The priest is a heavy job if you do it properly.
Yeah, there's a lot of chances.
You're constantly... And the exquisite thing of the cosmic Buddha is there are so many chances. It really wants us back. That's what hits you so much when you're doing when you have a full kensho. How much it really loves. It makes you almost faint with amazement. Considering the state you are in, how can I be in this mess? What am I? Talk about I'm a worm and no man. I'm less than a worm. It's scary when you do that. You really get an appreciation of your own size. Go ahead, Brenda. This also is why no real Zen master could end up like Jim Jones. Go ahead, friend.
If you did not turn back to the Lord before this time, you are now bound to be reborn in a dualistic state as a result of your mistaking reflection in the mirror for the reality. You have clung to a separate existence and turned away from the great Dharmakaya out of your confusion of mind. You are now appearing before the judge of the dead, whom you yourself have created. Hellhounds hold you bound and helpless before the mirror of karma, which is the mirror of your own memory.